Did you know that 90% of the world's millionaires invest in real estate? Well, I'm Angel with the Academy Presents Real Estate Investing Rocks, and I'm here to help you if you want to go for your piece of that pie.
Now that it doesn't matter where you live, we're going to see massive migration because you can school from anywhere and you can work from anywhere. So why are you living in that 600 square foot apartment, which is probably a really big one, in downtown Manhattan, right? You're probably going to want some more space after having to shelter in place and see that the semi trucks could not deliver groceries to your grocery stores. So the fact that they couldn't even get their infrastructure to give them the resources that they would need to buy, and I'm not talking toilet paper, up in Manhattan, you couldn't get food. You couldn't get a loaf of bread. So even if you wanted to go to, oh, we're going to do ramen noodles today, there was a restriction on how many soups and ramen noodles you could buy. And they were still sold out every time the truck was there. Within hours, the food was gone. So the people who went through that, where the shelter in place was in a very confined, small space, in a place where you couldn't get resources, there's going to be massive migration coming. And it's because now school's anywhere and now work's anywhere. So the people that are not tied to a specific location, like a Walmart or an Amazon distribution center, they can now go to a place in the country that has more square footage for the same amount of rent or less, and they can work from anywhere and keep the same job.
And I wonder how that's going to affect new construction as well, because usually in a downturn, you see a crop up of new construction. And we've seen some, but I'm seeing that it's kind of tapering off a little bit. Whereas I feel like in the past, we would see a whole lot more new construction than what we're actually seeing. I mean, I wonder why that is.
There's several reasons. One is a lot of our ports, our trade countries, it's still closed down. So materials are becoming tough to get. Another one is subcontracted labor has dried up immensely. So they had to make quick moves because all the projects stopped. Everybody stopped their projects. So all these subcontractors that rely on a Friday paycheck had to go find something else to make money. Well, now everybody's starting to come back to work, but some of them had to go to something that's more reliable. So the subcontract labor force has dried up a little bit. And then permitting offices, mostly closed down, mostly working from home. Has longer turnaround time, so people can't get the permitting they need just to go break ground. Or the price of lumber has jumped 5 times over the past few months. So lumber is much more expensive. People are having to get rebidded jobs, and things that they thought were going to cost this price now are triple the price, because lumber especially has jumped so high. Then let's throw some hurricanes in there. That's going to make lumber jump again, because all the lumber now needs to go down to the affected areas from the hurricanes, So it's multiple reasons, but it's not because people don't want to build new apartment complexes.
We've had so many things go on, like you're saying, but do you think that lumber is like the real price of it is going up? I mean, or is it like compounded by the fact that the dollar is losing value based on how much is just going out?
It's based off supply and demand. So if we can't get enough lumber to the area that needs it, the price goes up. Once the trucks start shipping logs again and the lumber mills start cutting lumber and we start bringing it from other locations and the borders are back open, things like that, then the normal flow of materials of any type start coming through again like they used to. But as long as there's a shortage in trucks, trains, deliveries, locations, mills closed down, we're going to see delays. It's just a lot of warehouses spent some time furloughing their people. Well, now we're feeling the impact from that. If your warehouse was closed and it has some sort of widget that it makes and it goes in this other thing that it makes, they're going to be out of stock or it's on back order for months. You guys probably saw it firsthand just looking at pool supplies, goggles, floaties, pool pumps, anything related to pools was out of stock almost the whole summer, because the minute the trucks would show up with more, they sold out within a few hours because everybody was stuck home and wanted something to do. So they all wanted to install a pool or go to the one they already knew about, and you couldn't get those supplies until the next truck came in. It's kind of that same thing. It's just related to construction now.
Yeah, I guess where we are, I mean, things closed down, but it wasn't like it was in other places, I don't think. And so I'm having personally, I'm having a harder time wrapping my head around the broken supply chains,
Mm-hmm.
because we just didn't see it as much here. I mean, we're 2 hours away from DFW that had total close down, much more severe than what we had here in Wichita Falls. So a big difference. And I think that makes it a little harder for me to understand, just because we didn't experience it the same way. Thinking about that supply chain breakdown is just like mind numbing.
Yep.
It's sad, actually.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, an economics class right now for a whole bunch of kids would probably be a good thing. Help them understand why the world's working the way it is right now.
Yeah. Well, and I didn't even think about the fact that the imports and exports, and I mean, I did that they'd be lessened, but when you think about some of the places that were hit the heaviest and the number of hands that those places generally have producing items, then seeing the effects makes more sense.
Yep. So we're just in the beginning of the woods. We haven't traveled through the woods yet, and we've got a long way to go. A lot of months left.
Yeah, I think that's something that people are beginning to wrap their minds around, especially with the stock market. The stock market is doing just crazy stupid things right now. There's absolutely no substance to why it's going up.
Yep.
I sit there and think about it, and I look at it and I'm like, the best meme I've seen is, it was a meme of the front of a house, and then so the front of the house looks amazing, and then all you see is the bones of the house behind it. You see the studs and the plumbing, and it's this is what the stock market is doing right now. So it's this facade of a house that looks amazing, and then all its bones behind it, just empty.
Wow.
And I was like, oh my gosh, that's amazing.
Yep.
Because it was just so accurate.
Yep. Be cautious. Be cautious.
Yeah, it's I don't know. I don't get it, but I also don't do a lot in stocks, just because to me they're very volatile, and even the S&P 500 isn't doing, it's not sustaining the way it usually does.
Yep.
So.
I've always liked real estate a lot better because it's slower. You won't see something happen in one day on a piece of real estate. It happens over a length of time. A property doesn't get distressed in one day. It happens over a long period of time. And so you don't get to the point of doing a capital call in one day. You don't get to the point of having 60% occupancy in one day. You don't get to the point of something having great NOI or poor NOI in one day. So it's just much more my speed, because it makes me feel like I can see what's coming next. And I'm 7 steps ahead down the road in my head, but stocks could be up, down, and up, and I lost money, right? They could also be down, up, down, and I made money. So it's just too fast. I'm not a blackjack player. I can't keep up with the system and the number of things you have to keep track of while they're saying hit, stay, all that stuff. I can't move that fast. I want to be methodical. I want to be slower, but that gives me that amount of time to think it through, find out the best course of action, and then execute on that.
Yeah. So with you saying that, things don't happen overnight in real estate, if you noticed that, because we haven't bottomed out. There's zero doubt in my mind that we have not bottomed out. A month or so ago, I was saying, expect it end of the year. Now I'm like, probably pushing into February, March. And I still strongly believe we're going to have a double bottom. It's just a gut feeling. I can't really explain all of it, but I just feel like we're going to bottom, and then we're going to recover, because people will be like, oh, that was the bottom. And then we're going to bottom again.
Makes sense.
And I don't know. I mean, so you're going to run through a period basically 2 job losses. So people are going to lose jobs, then they're going to get rehired, and then they're going to lose them again. And I'm kind of thinking like Class C properties. What are some things that you could do to mitigate that the real losses that are going to be experienced by a family that hits that second job loss?
Lease audit. You need to know where these people are working. What is their role in that company? If I have a whole bunch of people that are working at a restaurant, like a sit-down restaurant, and we have cold and flu season show up and it shuts everything down a second time, right? Do I really expect my waiters and my cooks to have a job? Probably not. So what percentage of your lease audit is people who work at sit-down restaurants? That's a problem. You want, just like you don't want to have saturation by certain concentrations of resident types, unless you're going into like student housing or something. You don't want to see a lot of students on the lease rent roll. Same thing with employers. You don't want to see a whole bunch of people that are all working down the street at this big one restaurant, and that takes up 40% of your leases. And so you're going to want to look at that, and it helps you plan if you know that. So we did that originally, I think week 3 of COVID, and figured out how many truck drivers we had, how many cooks we had, how many automobile jobs we had. And you start thinking of, do I expect there to be an impact from this industry if we did an exact copy of what happened in the spring? Just try not to get outside what we know initially when you're doing your first pass, and go, what lost jobs the first time and what flourished the first time? And then you can start dividing your rent roll down into those categories, and you can see how at risk one property is versus another. And then step 2 is, how can you help them? What can you do to help those people mitigate a future problem? Okay. So then we do another power storm, and we come up with all these ways we can go help our auto mechanics, our cooks, our people who are not working, white collar jobs, our blue collar workers, our house cleaners, all of those people who are going to see another impact only based off the data we had the first time. Obviously, if we went through a second wave, there would be some new industries that are okay and some new industries that suffer. But you've got to start somewhere. So start with the data, break it down, figure out the risk of that property. Every property will be different.
How would you, like, basing it on like the job, I guess the job demographic, how do you can't make that a leasing factor, like we won't hire you if you work at this company, but I just never even thought about how you could mitigate risk based on where somebody is employed. That's super cool.
You're assessing symptoms. Somebody comes in, brings a property and says, my property's sick and I can't figure out why. You're assessing it. You're trying to figure out, well, it's because you have 15% in the service industry, and you've got 20% all working at Peterbilt, and you've got, so that's, you already know your stress test on your property. It can't fall below a certain economic vacancy. Well, here's a whole list of residents that are going to be impacted by another change in what the government is telling us to do. So they're all going to lose their jobs, and they're all going to sit home, and they're going to have to do something because of what's happening right now. And so it's a health test of your property to prepare for a stress test. You're checking the health. You're not discriminating against leases. You're taking the leases you already have and looking at how healthy your resident profiles are and what is their job right now, and which ones go in the green category, which ones go in the orange category, and which ones go in the yellow category or the red category. You can, that's what we did the first time we color coded how much of at risk those jobs were. We didn't look at the people, we looked at the jobs. And that helped assess things we could come up with for those specific properties, how to pivot for those specific health tests based off of who was going to need help filling out an unemployment application, who was going to need help knowing that they could go to United Way and get assistance with their utilities or their rent. It put us into more contact with certain departments and city provided programs based off of the health of that property. So there's lots you can do. You just got to look at your data. Like you were saying at the very beginning, you got to look at the data. It's not just numbers anymore. It's rent rolls, it's employers, it's also numbers. But, having some sort of analytical background, not necessarily an accounting degree, but having a member of your sponsor team that is very detail oriented or analytical is really, really important for operations, especially right now.